Okay, I'm not as bright as some people, so I have to model things to think about it. And here's one example of a sensor. This is the back side. You can see it's multifaceted. This is a little smarter than the one you'll see that we did as an illustration in the patent filing. Added these corners because you sort of started to sense that we needed a little more curving than we're giving it. This also is obviously way oversized. Picture this as being as small as your little fingernail, and that's if you're a very little person. Then we've got a sensor that is just about perfect for cell phones. And with this in a cell phone, the cell phone can take party pictures at night without flash. We're talking a real advance here. Save some battery power, for your cell phone won't be flashing all night, and you get terrific pictures thanks to an almost curved sensor. Here's a second one. This clearly would be for a surveillance camera or a astronomy type camera, something that shoots long distance where most of the rays coming in are pretty parallel. This slightly curved sensor would make it much faster. Instead of waiting 2 hours for that picture of stars in the sky, you could get it in seconds using this sensor and faster lenses. Here is, well, this is stupid. I got a little too hung up on geodesic, and some geodesic domes, because they are outside, have pointed roofs so the rain will run off. That's very dumb. Just proves I wasn't thinking very clearly. Now, let's get back to how we make the sensor. And you will see in the patent filing, we suggest one way which takes care of the gaps between each sensor. And that is best read in the patent. I don't think I can do it justice by trying to explain it verbally. But let me tell you about a second method that is in the patent filing that I think is ingenious. That is this. I've sketched in with a magic marker gaps between the sensors that make up this overall sensor. Well, how do we fill in those gaps? Very easy. You take one picture and then the sensor rotates 1 degree, and it takes a second picture a 10,000th of a second later. And the software can detect which imagery came from the gaps and which came from the sensors, and it stitches them together. How slick is that? This makes it easy to assemble multifaceted sensors. We need to talk to more sensor people to find out if that's even necessary, but that is one very clever way to get there. The other way may work just fine. We'll find out when we get involved with the sensor people. Okay, that is a really clever solution. We have two clever solutions as to how you make the fabrication of these sensors easier. I want to jump now to a different concept that is absolutely equally ingenious and fundamental to this. Variable density sensors. If you're making these facets for the sensors in different production runs, you can run one where the center sensor has very high density and then surround it with increasingly less dense sensors. Now, why would you do that? Very simply, by doing that, you have a more economical sensor because density in a sensor, I'm presuming, has quite a bit to do with the yield you get when you make them. So I think high density sensors are going to be more expensive, but fortunately we've got a very little one just in the center. That's the only place you need it because that's where you're operating when you zoom. And this way we get high resolution, very good imagery by digitally zooming. Problem solved. Another thing we will do is we will have software, and this is in our patent, that compresses the center sensors when you zoom back to wide angle. Why? Because you don't need that much information when you're shooting wide angle. All of that data from the center sensor is unnecessary and causes more processing problems and storage chores. So we will compress it at wide angle, and when we zoom in to telephoto, you'll use all of the data in the center. Another extremely clever concept, and one that becomes practical when you make sensors out of separate facets. Okay, we are also messing around with a third concept that I will not divulge. I won't even give a hint of today because we haven't filed on it yet. In fact, we're not sure we believe it yet. It's going to require a little more work. And so, just so you can view this without any liability, just know that we're still thinking, we're still working on some stuff. Now, there's some of you out there that are tradition bound, that have been good loyalists to the camera industry for a very long time. You know how much has been invested in the existing optical formulas and all of the science and technology that has done such a beautiful job overcoming the inherent problems with flat sensors. And there are some of you who will resist this concept, and I have a suggestion for you. First, move to Detroit, Michigan, where people really do cling to old things. And secondly, you can go to Amazon.com and get a book on the Flat Earth Society, where there are a group of people that believe the Earth is still flat. And I think possibly you might fit in well with them. That was a little sarcastic. I'm sorry. Just trying to make a point. Okay, now some of you are getting worried about sensor costs, and let me tell you why it is not as bad as you might be imagining. When chips are made, when sensors are made, there's a yield factor that really determines cost. And silicon always has some problems with it. And so let's say that this is a sheet that's coming off and it costs $1,000, and it had a silicon error there, and it had a silicon error there, and let's put another one over here. Now, we got 6 out of 9 sensors, and that probably, if this is $1,000, that means we're looking at about $1,600 per sensor cost, I think, if I get that right. But let's say we make them smaller just by subdividing them. So what I'm going to do now is, instead of 9 sensors, I'm going to make 81 sensors out of this same piece of silicon. And if we go like this, and 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 like this, now, guess what? Same defects, we got 78 out of 81, and our cost has dropped to $103 per sensor if we assemble 9 into each. That is sort of the principle behind smaller pieces in production costing less. Now, we will lose some of that back to the assembly, which is going to be more complicated. But remember how much we're saving on the optics, all of which makes these cameras better, better imagery, lighter, cheaper, and more dependable.